What's going on, y'all? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit in Pathfinder 1st Edition. Today, by request, the Mesmerist Gaslighter, with a side goal of winning the encounter before initiative is rolled, and probably me digging through all the archives of Nethys to find how efficiently one can carry a mirror with them. But if you're liking what you're seeing, remember to like, subscribe, ding the bell. Stay caught up on all your stuff. Remember, Patreon gets you this and a billion other Google Sheets where all of my 1st edition, 2nd edition, and Starfinder characters are brewed up for you, and even more cool shit. But for now, okie doke. So before we get down to talking about the actual build, we should probably talk about what the Mesmerist as a class does. Because as it often was with late stage 1st edition Pathfinder classes, it's kind of a lot. Fortunately, I've played one of these before, and I use them as NPCs when I need to troll my party a lot, so I have a lot of experience here. What does the Mesmerist do? Well, my friend, it's real good at lying via Consummate Liar. It gets its casting stat to its will saves, without all the trappings of the paladin. It has not one, but two different kinds of definitely not class feats, first in the form of Mesmerist tricks, little baby contingencies you can put in your allies to give them value in combat, as well as the Mesmerist Stare, which debuffs starting out just will saves, but eventually whatever you want via Bold Stare. You also can do damage to the target of your stare via Painful Stare, either single points of damage scaling when your allies hit, or d6s when you do. See what I mean? You can kind of do whatever. You could build a very big strength-based Vital Striker that adds a bunch of extra d6s of damage on top. You can build a much more traditional stay in the back saver suck kind of thing, or just be, again, as we so often do here on the channel these days, that 5th person in the party, someone to cover whatever gaps happen to be there. Oh, did I mention we have touch treatment? I guess I didn't mention we have touch treatment. It's like a lay on hands, but without the trappings of the paladin, and only targeting certain kinds of conditions, generally the ones that play with your mind. But today, the archetype we are building around, the Gaslighter, who must be of evil alignment, really good at dodging the trappings of the paladin there, trades out its touch treatment for abilities that are kind of horrible and terrible and terrifying, starting with Horrid Mask. Beginning at 3rd level, the Gaslighter can implant a phantasm in the mind of the target of their hypnotic stare, which causes them to perceive their reflection as fucked up somehow. It's a mind-affecting fear effect, but there's no save, and any round in which the target can see itself in a mirror within 30 feet, the Gaslighter can Painful Stare without necessarily being able to have line of sight. Though, of course, a creature can attempt to avert its eyes to avoid its own eyes staring back at it. It's weird. Creatures holding visible mirrors that attempt to demoralize targets can choose to use the Gaslighter's Cha in place of their own, which is huge for intimidating prowess barbarians, just because if you have the Mesmerist in the party, you could dump your charisma and still come out real good. This eventually ticks up to Phantasmal Force at level 6 when the Gaslighter uses Horrid Mask. If the target begins its turn adjacent to a mirror, it's a will save, or they must flee from the mirror or attempt to destroy it. At 10th level, the target is treated as being flanked. At 14th level, whenever a creature fails its initial save against a Gaslighter's single target mind affecting effect, which is the entire shtick of this build. Is this also spells? Most of our spells are mind affecting, right? As long as it's only targeting a single target, you take 1 point of wisdom damage, which helps close out fights quicker and easier, right? The value is kind of written on the wall here. Oh, also you get half your Mesmerist level on Intimidate instead of Bluff things on this build, but we're not worried about that today. Today we're worried about building around this weird ability to make what essentially comes out to a very strange control gish. If you're compelling someone to destroy a mirror, this probably means you have home field advantage. We'll talk more about that later. But mirrors are relatively easy to purchase, relatively easy to mend, and there are other kinds of magic items which we can do mirror-y things with. If a target is compelled to sunder something someone is carrying, they aren't attacking your party, or they're just straight up running away. This being while we're debuffing saves, while we're dealing damage, while we still have the ability to cast spells and stuff. And it makes it easier on the rest of our party. This is a very good, who is the most threatening target on the field? Or failing that, who has the lowest will save, do we think, on the field? Let's bully them. Of course, there are some feats that one may consider staple that we're not necessarily seeing here. We are using our modified elephant in the room. Follow this card right up here if you want to know more. For today's race, of all the things, we're dipping into the core race section, Wild, for the Half-Orc. This is primarily for the favored class bonus, as it always is in the case of optimizing in this house. The Half-Orc Mesmerist having the very, very powerful increase the Mesmerist bonus damage from Painful Stare by 1/2 a point. 2 levels gives you +1, 20 levels gives you +10. We will be doing 20 levels of Mesmerist today. Even if you only play this to like 6th, you'll see value out of it. For our traits, they're kind of super boring and easy, but that's okay, because a lot of our build isn't. Reactionary for the buff to initiative, magical lineage choosing mental block, that spell's rude, and we'll talk about it later. For ability score priority, charisma first, number 1, as it is our casting stat, then dexterity. If we're attacking, and if you're cool damaging with it, it's also our AC. Con, so you don't die. Whiz, so they don't get in your mind while you're trying to get in their mind. Strength and intelligence, 2 stats we just straight up don't need now. For the feats, out the gate, improved initiative. Wild, right? I'm usually taking this one at 19th, if I take it at all. But having the ability to go first in a world where you're setting up the debuffs is real big. This is even before things along the lines of play around with too many mirrors. This is just, oh, okay, I'm up, cool, great, excellent. Painful Stare, target you, debuff your will save, send it on over to the wizard who's about to color spray, or next turn when you color spray. Point is, we have a lot of setup. We want to go first. At level 3, as soon as we qualify, we'll take Manifold Stare. If you've got a lot of very damage-heavy characters or like a 2-weapon fighting rogue who really needs that extra push more than once in a round, yeah, by all means. Once is a dot ticking twice. When, again, we're much more of a lockout build than a damage build, which we partially achieve with Ready for Battle. By the time we've hit level 5, we can implant Mesmerist tricks in 2 of our allies. Whilst we have tricks implanted in our allies, whilst we've fiddled around with our allies' brains, the subject gains a +2 morale bonus on initiative checks until the trick is triggered or its duration ends. The trick probably doesn't get triggered until sometime in the combat, so this just flat means you also get to go a little faster than the bad guys, at least probably. Next up, ability focus, choosing Phantasmal Force, it being one of our special attacks, for a +2 to the save. Then Confusing Stare, again as soon as we qualify. Whenever we trigger Painful Stare, the target must will save or be confused for a round. The target has to roll twice to determine the result of its confused condition, and you decide whether or not it gets to do it at once or babble incoherently as it hugs its own katana. Manifold Stare one more time at level 11, because why the heck not? I'm assuming we have lots of friends who like to stab people. Let's help them do it. Then Persistent Spell. Is this late? Yeah, kinda. But I'm guessing our spells are sticking, given how much we're playing with people's brains and therefore will saves. Whenever a creature targeted by a persistent spell or within its area succeeds on its save, it has to save twice, essentially. If it fails the second save, it suffers the full effect as if it had failed the first. This uses the spell slot 2 levels higher. And since spell level determines spell DC, the higher we can get spells, the more we're going to make sure they stick when we're trying to cast level 1 magic at people. Quicken Spell comes next, so you can cast things as a swift action. Then everyone in the world is going to be mad at me waiting till level 17 to take Logical Spell, but we have really good will saves. So I'm guessing we're not getting shaken a lot until like the end game. It's time to go play around with Cthulhu's brain. So then we'll take the +1 Metamagic feat that removes our emotion components that lets us cast while we're shaken and things. This is also primarily for our final feat, Spell Perfection. Again, choosing mental block, applying a Metamagic feat to that spell when we cast it without affecting its level or casting time, as long as the modified level of the spell doesn't use a spell slot above 9th level. Hey, we don't even get those. For our fun stuff, for the Bold Stare, first, Nightmare. This forces the target of our Hypnotic Stare to roll twice on will saves against fear and take the lower. You know, our whole shtick. Infiltration next to penalize our target's perception checks and CMD, because I'm envisioning a world where they're looking at mirrors and seeing reflections and therefore losing us. Or even if that's just us around the corner not having cast invisibility yet. This build has a lot of break into someone's house and play around with their brains, play with your food energy. So we're leaning in. We're leaning in hard. Disorientation will debuff attack rolls next, then Timidity to debuff damage rolls, then lastly Allure to debuff perception again and initiative checks. Imagine all of those stacking on one dude. That's rough. That hurts. But enough hurt. Let's talk about help. in the form of our Mesmerist tricks, starting with Fearsome Guise. When we implant this trick, the ally's appearance is altered. Like Disguise Self, the Mesmerist can trigger the trick when the subject attacks a creature. The illusory appearance briefly makes the subject appear monstrous, then ends. The Mesmerist gets an Intimidate check to demoralize, using an illusion glamour effect. This is a really good one to just sit in our back pocket, buff the fighter's initiative, make the guy afraid who's already running from a mirror, right? Keep the debuffs rolling until, well, we've dealt with the problem. Psychosomatic Surge. When our subjects take damage, they gain a number of temp HP equal to a D8 plus half our level. Should the damage have reduced our target to 0 hit points or fewer, it grants an additional D8. They last for an hour. Telepathic Link. When the subject and their allies are outnumbered in combat, for 1 minute per Mesmerist level, the subject and the Mesmerist can communicate telepathically. If the subject and the Mesmerist are more than medium distance apart, it's severed and can't be regained unless the trick is implanted again. Again, really like this for the we're gonna go screw around with this person, or my best friend is going to try to like sneak around and stuff and then trips a combat and he's outnumbered 3 to 1. He can tell me, I can tell everyone else. Sometimes we're kind of the watchtower on this build. Misdirection is next. When the subject makes an attack or uses a spell that requires an attack roll, the Mesmerist attempts a bluff check to feint against the target of our barbarian's great axe. If the feint succeeds, the target of the attack is denied its dex bonus to AC against the triggering attack. The target doesn't suffer any additional effects. Mesmeric Mirror. When our subject is attacked or becomes the target of a spell that requires an attack roll, we make a single mirror image, or 1 for every 5 Mesmerist levels we have, lasting for a minute or until destroyed. Because oftentimes a mischance or just a 1d4 you hit me on a 4 is strictly better than padding out AC. This could very well buy the low HP, I'm running out of classes, wizard a couple rounds should someone get behind your lines. Meek Facade. When your ally is missed with an attack, even on a full attack, the enemy becomes locked to attack only that subject. The subject gains a +2 dodge bonus to AC against the triggering enemy's attacks for a round. The bonus goes up by 1 for every 5 levels. It's a mind-affecting compulsion. You know, maybe I do want to attack that monk who's like doing cartwheels around all of my attacks as opposed to the much squishier target. They have a meek facade. See what I mean? We can kind of do everything everyone wants. It's really cool. Vision of Blood. When an enemy is struck by the subject, it believes its wound is far more severe. The Mesmerist triggers this when our subject hits with an attack using a weapon, a natural weapon, or an unarmed strike. The target must succeed at a will save, which I'm presuming we've debuffed into the dirt, or be stunned for a round. They don't get a save if it came from the Magi's Keen Scimitar. Next, Cursed Sanction. When we implant this one, we do summoner things. We give them a visible circular symbol on the subject's forehead. When the subject is attacked or becomes the target of a spell that requires an attack roll, the attacker takes a -4 on attack roll, saves, ability checks, and skill checks for a minute per Mesmerist level, will negates, for the rest of their life, ostensibly. Spatial Switch. When an enemy moves adjacent to or attacks either the subject or the Mesmerist, provided the subject and the Mesmerist are within 100 feet of another, they swap places. No, you are not chasing after the guy in the back who's staring at you funny and saying weird things about mirrors. No, you're attacking his best friend, who's just a wall of beef and at this point has enough magic items to buy an empire, but is instead choosing to use that gold to kill you. Faked Death. When a subject is damaged by an attack, a programmed image makes them fall down dead, but actually they turn invisible for a number of rounds equal to the Mesmerist's level or until they attack. If nothing else, this sows the seeds of chaos, or the rogue who got his greater invisibility dispelled has an easier chance at sneak attacksville. Either is good. Lastly, Spell Anticipation. When the Mesmerist implants this trick, we must expend 1 spell slot to couple a spell we know of that level with the trick. The spell must have a casting time of a standard action or less and be able to target 1 creature. We can trigger this trick when the subject is targeted by an enemy's spell. I'm guessing at this point someone is casting at you. If I'm wrong, then I don't know what game you're in. Essentially, this is if you cast a spell at me, I'm going to throw something horrible at you. It doesn't stop the bad guy's spell, but it is a really cool contingency just to have this floating around at the beginning of the day. You're going to target me with a Disintegrate? Mental block. I know I'm fighting a very powerful humanoid. You're going to target me with a thing? Hold person. See what I mean? So I'm literally only talking about 1 spell today. There are more. We can do a lot of cool stuff, but a lot of them are things we've gone over. And I truly feel like I would be double speaking if I was like, oh, well, you know, take Confusion, take Hold Person, Hold Monster, take Sleep, take Color Spray, take all of these very staple illusion or enchantment spells. Rather, I want to focus on the 1 spell that's probably our biggest, most horrible bread and butter. It's available available to Bards and Scalds at level 2, and I know I've talked about it for Bards and Scalds because it's so terrifying. Mental Block, a first level spell for us. At rounds per level, with a will save to negate, the target loses all skill ranks, spells known, spells prepared, and activated feats, as well as EXs, SUs, and spell likes. Each round at the end of their turn, they can try to save to end the effect again. Go open any random monster in any bestiary. Tell me how many things in the comments below just fell off if they lose all of their extraordinary, supernatural, and spell like. This leaves you like your hit dice, your base attack bonus, your ability scores. The casters have lost all their spells. Someone who needed to stealth away can no longer do that. The intimidate build was just shut off. The power attack build was just shut off. The dragon's breath weapon is shut off. Everything go bye-bye. The thing that make thing good is no longer there to be good, and so that bad for them, right? Easy enough to understand. This spell is so terrifying that I almost think that it was unfair to make. It's a level 1 spell for us, so the DC is low. If you're finding high DC things pop up a lot, take Spell Focus and Greater Spell Focus, Divination of all things, to improve your DC. But bear in mind, we're also debuffing will saves. We like to make people shaken. We like to hit people with bold stares. Eventually, even like 5 rounds is probably a creature's entire lifespan in the right party. And even if you just took away, I'm running out of classes, the Swashbuckler's ability to opportune parry and riposte just for a round, just long enough for your anti-paladin's great axe to come down and cut them to ribbons. That's value. But we gotta talk about the other value before we get out of here. We want mirrors to show up a lot in this world. This build will often benefit from having home field advantage or the setup time to have people show up and set mirrors places, but we can't always ensure in our campaigns this is going to happen. Therefore, we got to dig into some weird fucking magic items today. First of all, starting with the Mirrored Enchantment, which can be placed on any armor or shield at a +1 bonus. It lets us roll with advantage when we are averting our eyes versus gaze attacks, so I guess go buy a Basilisk and dump it in your Hall of Mirrors. I don't know. The wearer can deal sneak attack or other precision damage, even if they have concealment. We've all read, what was it, Jason and the Argonauts, whoever killed the Medusa in Greek mythology. Way more important here, the polished surface of a mirrored shield or armor gleams and shines and can be used as an ordinary mirror, aka can provide our debuff. We might not be knights in shining armor because we're probably terrible people, but God, we're gonna look the part. Failing that, we have a couple of slotless items, namely the Mirror of Guarding Reflections, a palm-sized hand mirror, which always seems ghostly and insubstantial. When a creature holding the mirror is targeted by an attack, they can spend an immediate action to summon their reflection from the glass to interpose itself, like a mirror image, except if that image is destroyed, the person we're gaslighting is subject to bad luck. The next time they make an attack roll or save, they have to roll with disadvantage. The mirror can be used 3 times per day. Again, even if you're not firing this off, it's a slotless item. Theoretically, you can attach this to your belt somewhere, you could attach it to a rope around your neck. It weighs 4 pounds. A lot of characters can stomach just carrying that, and anyone who has a free hand likes carrying this around, especially if you've bought it for your class's value, and it's just, hey, here, hold this. You cool? Great. Excellent. Your mileage may vary based on how many two-handed weapon builds exist. The Attentive Mirror, a little more expensive but half a pound, a small ornate mirror mounted inside an enclosing case, like a locket, small jewelry box, amulet, which you can leave open so the bad guy can look at it, whatever. To use the Attentive Mirror, the owner must spend an hour gazing into the mirror in a ritual to attune themselves to it. At the end of this time, the owner can willingly give the mirror to another creature. Thereafter, the creature that has the mirror can use it as an emergency means of communication with the mirror's owner, probably us if we're really split up. This party probably wants that. Up to 3 times per day, the mirror's possessor can open it to alert the attuned owner, like a mental alarm out to 100 miles. Something something Irison lore something something. It's a mirror that gives us extra value. And of course, you can literally go buy physical mirrors and just carry them around places, I guess. Consider everyone in the party is wearing armor made from adamantine or has an adamantine shield with the mirrored enchantment, and the target cannot flee from the mirror, therefore has to try to sunder it, probably wasting their turns scrabbling at their own reflection while, again, we pummel them into the ground. Or if you want to get real rude, aka if you have a GM who's going to be very nice with this, the almighty Mirror of Opposition certainly comes to mind. This one's about 4 feet long, 3 feet wide. Your permanently enlarged barbarian is going to need to strap this to their thigh. It's activated by speaking a command word, at which point no one in the party looks at that again. I guess that's why we want the mirrored enchantment, because we're averting our eyes and could roll with advantage. Okay, it came full circle. Hell yeah. If a creature sees its reflection in the mirror's surface, aka if everything we want to happen happens, an exact duplicate of that creature comes into being. The opposite immediately attacks the original. The duplicate has all of the cool stuff they do, and upon the defeat or destruction of either that duplicate or the original, the duplicate and its items disappear completely. This functions 4 times per day. If you pop the mirror, all the duplicates immediately vanish. It's a very, very high level and powerful item. I'm assuming a lot of our endgame not magically inclined opponents are not going to know that. And even if the mirror of opposition gets destroyed, at this point we have high enough magic to just fix the damn thing. It's super flavorful for someone who's trying to get inside someone's head and convince them that they have no friends and all this horrible shit. When the Paladin of Torog is suddenly vomiting a, anti-Paladin of Droskar? You might just have someone in the party carry a particularly large cloak to cover the mirror. Then of course we gotta have that big 6 follow this card right up here if you don't know what that is. Runestones of Power for all the spells we can get so we can keep throwing mental blocks at everyone after they're debuffed, lose all their abilities, then spawn someone with their abilities to kill them. Then lastly, the Mask of the Mesmerist. Hey, that's us. This increases our hypnotic stare ability by 10 feet and imparts a -2 penalty on attack rolls against us if someone is being hypnotically stared at by us. Once per day, if we possess the Mesmerist Trick class feature, wow, we do, we can implant a trick without expending a use of the Mesmerist Trick ability. This doesn't count against the limit of total tricks active at the same time. It's just the beautiful yes and item that often exists in the core book where a bunch of classes were printed. Now, in the optimized party, God, I haven't talked about this in so long. Follow this card. I see you all. I know I need to make one for 2E. I'm kind of sort of working on it. The request line is just kind of big at this point. We're definitely that control boy. You've got people who are there to do a lot of damage. We've got a lot of people for big gum up the board control. We are the, wait, what are you? Are you a threat? You're not a threat without all of your abilities. You're not a threat sufficiently debuffed. You're not a threat paralyzed on the ground where someone will coup de grace you. This build just has a lot of really cool extra abilities, so we're not literally just that. As effective as that is, and as fun as those games can be, they do get a little on the stale side sometimes. So having something as flavorful as the Hall of Mirrors horribleness, well, we've all seen the end of Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? If you haven't, go watch that. You have time right now. That's where we're going to call this episode. What do y'all think? Are we still playing 1E? I see a lot of, hey, thanks for doing 1E comments. What can I say? I'm a grognard. I'm not ready to let go yet. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments. As always, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.